Very few of us are aware that people of African origin have been living in India for centuries. There are a number of documentaries out there by the BBC, Al Jazeera, and others which have tried to draw attention to the current plight of these remarkable African diasporas. Unfortunately, most of these accounts only mention that they had arrived in what we now know as India as slaves. They also dwell on their present deplorable situation without proper reference to their glorious past and their role in the emergence of present day India and even Pakistan. Welcome to the Sankofa Pan African series. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notification buttons if you haven't done so. And also continue to support us through Patreon or by buying me coffee. So first, who are the Afro-Indians as they are now collectively known, who can be found in India and Pakistan? Well, they are descendants of the Bantu of Africa, who are now known as Siddi. These Africans were originally known as Habshis, which is Persian for Abyssinian, as we have seen in the past episodes. Abyssinian or Ethiopian was the name which was used to describe not just Ethiopians but black people generally during various points in history. It is possible that it was the name Habshis that became corrupted to Siddi. Some sources also believe that Siddi is an etymon, a derivation from the Arabic word for master, Sayyid or Sayyid. It is not entirely clear when Habshis was replaced by Siddi to refer to Africans who settled in India and Pakistan. Currently, Siddi describes all people of African descent in India. According to Minorities' Rights Group International, India's Siddis are a large group of Afro-descendant communities with an estimated 150,000 members in the country. There is no reliable official source of nationwide information regarding the Siddi population in India and their socio-economic conditions, quality of life, and the problems they face. They are scattered across Karnataka, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Goa, and Tamil Nadu. Often, they live in isolated villages and interior forests. So how did they get there? Various historical sources prove that the Siddis arrived in India in several waves. For instance, according to Yatin Pandya and Trupti Rawal, who studied them, the first Muslims in Gujarat to have arrived are the Siddis via the Bharuch port in 628 AD. Although the major group arrived in 712 AD via Sindh and the north. In 1411 AD, when Ahmedabad was founded, it became the concentrated base of the Siddis. For more information and references to these points, check up the Ahmedabad Chronicle, Imprints of a Millennium by Vastu Shilpa Foundation for Studies and Research in Environmental Design. It was published in 2002. So in 1490, an African guard known as Sidi Badr seized power in Bengal and ruled for 3 years before being murdered. 5,000 of the 30,000 in his army were African or Ethiopian, as they were called. Other sources say that the Mughals, a Muslim imperial power in northern India from the early 16th century through to the early 19th century, relied on African soldiers, with one emperor reportedly being protected by 700 armed Siddi on horseback. Again, in 1843, an African called Hosh Mohammed Shahidi commanded an army against the British in Dabo, which, despite losing, delayed the annexation of the province of Sindh to Imperial British. These Africans fought to protect India against British invasion. From an ocean fortress north of Mumbai between the 17th and 20th century, the Siddi controlled a 300-kilometer stretch of coastline stretching from Mumbai to Goa. In contrast to the transatlantic slave trade, those Africans who were brought to India were sometimes able to rise to positions of power through their positions in the military. Some became so powerful from their connection to Maharajas, for whom they initially worked as bodyguards or soldiers, which allowed some of them to rise and become kings in their own right, controlling kingdoms within India. The direct descendants of these noble Africans still survive today in India. Others who did not enlist as soldiers worked as domestic helpers, concubines, sheep hands, and in other industries such as the mining of agate. Some ancestors of the Siddi were also brought to India as slaves by Arabs as early as the 7th century, followed by the Portuguese and the British later on. Others were free people who went to India as merchants, sailors, and mercenaries before the Portuguese slave trade went into overdrive. When slavery was banished in the 18th century, in the 18th and 19th centuries, a lot of Siddis fled into the country's thick jungles, fearing recapture and torture, because by then, of course, racism had become ingrained into the system. So, where are they to be found now? Currently, they can be found in small pockets of villages in the Indian states of Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Gujarat, and also the city of Hyderabad. There is also a sizable population of Siddis in Pakistan. No doubt must have moved when India and Pakistan became separated. Now, according to the Siddi project, please take the time to look up this website. It has a lot of information about them there. So it's called the Siddi project. Now, today there are people of African descent living in India spread across several states, but mostly concentrated, as I said earlier, in Karnataka and Gujarat. Most Siddis are fully integrated into modern day India, but some have managed to retain aspects of their African heritage, especially in their appearance and their music and other customs like funerals and other social customs. Now, the Siddi of Gujarat are predominantly Muslim, while those in Karnataka are mostly Christian or Hindu. So, what is their current status? Well, again, according to the minorities' rights report, like most others in other places in the world, Since race has come to determine status socially, the Siddi are some of the most marginalized communities and are largely settled in villages and smaller settlements. Whilst the caste principle of hierarchy is non existent among the Siddi themselves, they are generally treated like the Dalits or untouchables, the lowest stratum caste in India. Although the general principle of untouchability is supposed to have been outdated, the upper castes and a few other communities and also at the individual level still observe and practice untouchability. For instance, according to some reports, when Siddis are invited to functions or ceremonies such as marriage and whatnot, food will be served separately and they will be made to clean the floor after the food is served. Thank you for watching this episode of the Sankofa Pan-African series. Please turn on your notification buttons if you haven't done so and subscribe, and also continue to support us through Patreon and by buying me coffee. See you next time.